Guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de. Guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de. Guano de, guano de, guano de, no de, guano de, guano de. Chip again. Guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de. Guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de. What next? Guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de. Gagaweo. Guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de. Guano de, guano de, guano de, guano de. Menagade. Guano de, guano de, hey, guano de, da-ho.
Hey, ula hala wai ana e molale I tala ala panoa ke kula oku mano mano. Tūni hika noho a mau na lahi lahi ho maha kui ka wai o lua lua. Le ana anu I ke kamakahala I pauku ia me ka ahihi. I ho hi hina hoi au na una hoi oi o ka okule ana paano ia he ke hao le he lulu lima e te aloha e ai. Hey, o ke kilohana ke kona na kamali e huliana o ko hala I mau I nei e nānana I ka makani helau awa o wai pi o wai man. Helu aku ana puua peli ai o puuwa awa o puua na hulu o pili no me kalahi ki ola I ke ka moku nui la o Hawaii. Ke kau nei o Hawaii luna me helu pe ala kalele o ni ke po oka na pele akula ka mahale wa aku ke le kula. Nui ta wala ai o ikua ka malama hei ke haole he lulu lima e te aloha hei ke Hawaii he honi no te aloha 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 aloha. Welcome to Weaving Culture and Community, Native Arts and Resilience. Thank you so much for joining us. Real-time captioning and American Sign Language interpretation are available during today's live program. To view the simulcast that includes these services, please use the link provided in the comments section. If you are viewing this program after the live broadcast, please note that it will be also made available on our website with closed captioning. My name is Aaron J. Salah. I'm a native Hawaiian musician and singer and an ethnomusicologist from Honolulu, Hawaii, and it is my pleasure to act as conversant and as facilitator for our time together today. The song you heard leading up to the start of the program was a Passamaquoddy greeting song. Singers are Passamaquoddy elders Wayne Newell and Blanche Sakabason, performing at the 2013 Smithsonian Folklife Festival. The chant I performed on camera is a Hawaiian chant of welcome written by Elder Isabella Haleala Miller Deshay. Today, we invite you to participate in a conversation about Native arts and resilience in the face of crisis. We'll be taking your comments in the live chat, so please participate. We would love to know where everyone is joining us from, so definitely let us know where you all are. If you have any questions for us, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. We'll leave some time to talk through as many of them as we can. Thank you for that. This program is presented as part of the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage's initiative, Chronicling Culture in Crisis. It has deep roots in the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, bringing together participants from the 2006 festival program, Carriers of Culture, Living Native Basket Traditions, and from the 2013 festival program, One World, Many Voices, Endangered Languages and Cultural Heritage. I am tremendously excited to be talking with Bud and Teresa today, whom you'll meet in just a few moments. The three of us bring together really the extremities of the United States, with Teresa in Maine on America's East Coast, Bud in Oregon on the West Coast, and me out here in beautiful, balmy Hawaii. I hope you're all warm. If you don't know the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, I encourage you to check out the website festival.si.edu to learn about our programs, educational resources, and more. Now, please help me welcome our guests. Alfred Bud Lane III is a master Siletz basket maker and language teacher from Siletz, Oregon. He has worked tirelessly for decades to revitalize and teach his tribe's Athabascan language and to perpetuate the treasured cultural traditions of the Siletz people. He is the president of the Northwest Native American Basket Weavers Association. Teresa Secord is an acclaimed Penobscot basket maker from Farmington, Maine, and the founding director of the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance. Among her many honors, she was awarded a National Heritage Fellowship from the National Endowment for the Arts in 2016 for her artistic excellence and her efforts to preserve and pass on the centuries-old basketry traditions of the Wabanaki people. Welcome, Bud and Teresa. I'm so happy we're all together today.
Kwei.
Yeah.
Pleasure.
So over the arc of our conversation, I'd like to approach our time from three main vantage points: as artists ourselves and how our cultural legacies have provided us a sense of belonging to and a sense of ownership, really, over our communities and cultural practices. And then as teachers and educators, and of course, as enduring students ourselves in the face of crisis. And finally, as leaders reflecting on our cultural practices and considering the multiple futures that are possible. So I'd like to start off our conversation today by really acknowledging that as Indigenous peoples, we are absolutely no strangers to crisis, and to be more pointed, to disease. As you both consider the legacies of cultural practices that have culminated in the work that you currently do, are there initial thoughts that you both might have for how the pandemic has created an opportunity to reflect upon our cultural legacies? I'll ask you first, Teresa.
Sure. Thanks, Aaron. What a pleasure to be here. It was also heartwarming to hear the late Blanche Sauk Basin and Wayne sing together, welcoming us. I think a lot about the hardships of our ancestors, but yet also in my decades of work with basket makers, the very resilience of our people and especially our ancestors. And so often when I'm presenting, I show a photo of my great-grandmother selling her baskets in 1953. And this is on the Indian Island, Maine, the Penobscot reservation community in 1953. And I'm fortunate enough to have inherited all of the wooden forms and tools here that my baskets are woven with. But here I see, in addition to resilience, she's projecting this Indigenous sovereignty, economic self-sufficiency, and self-determination as a woman. My woven baskets today very much reflect her style. And I also us this strong entrepreneurial spirit. And I also have a basket that I wove that includes an antique business card of her father-in-law. So going back to my great-great-grandfather. And again, showing this entrepreneurial business in many of the Penobscot and Passamaquoddy families in Maine. And this is a 1912 replica piece of a postcard basket where a basket maker would have had his, kind of calling card or business card in. And lastly, I think we have a photo too of my great-great-grandfather wearing the collar and cuffs of the Penobscot chief in 1920. So again, I thought a lot about my legacy as a basket maker when the pandemic began. And I guess in answer to your question about, maybe my own resilience, my first reaction was to pivot and get my baskets online and start selling through my own website, which I did through social media and built my website to say, this is my legacy too, to carry on this entrepreneurial.
I want to talk more about your entrepreneurial spirit and how this time has sort of empowered that part of you, especially in moving to the digital space. But, in speaking about the cultural legacy, how has this time affected a sort of a reflection for you on the work that you're doing and the work that you have done?
Well, actually, culture has always been in crisis for us. This began to unfold for the Siletz people, for my people here in the 1830s and 40s. with removal to this reservation initially and all of that attendant trauma that came along with it, which in many ways extends to this very day. So we have always had pressures one way or another on us continuing our cultural practices. And for things like language, it got to a point where 30 years ago, it got down to a handful of people that were still fluent and able to speak the language.
Mm-hmm.
And with the use of technology, we were able to do a lot of different things with language, but nothing takes the place of that face-to-face teaching from one generation to the next. But in the pandemic that's been going on now, we've, it's a mixed bag. There's winners and losers. And while it's forced us to analyze how we teach and how we can teach effectively, it's also opened up doors for us that we didn't really use extensively before. We've been forced to do that. So, for instance, I'm able to reach classes at Willamette University, an anthro class that I've done lectures in, and even down in grade schools in other school districts here where I hadn't before. We're actually doing that. But my one-on-one classes have evaporated, of course. So it's a mixed bag, and we've faced adversity like this before. And I think that us teaching, and this is one of my granddaughter, Hallie, here, as a matter of fact, this picture that's up now. And that's that for people in your bubble, that's a great way to be able to teach and learn. But during the pandemic, we're of course having to use those other tools, Zoom, and I'm actually getting good at it now. Beginning to learn a little bit of those types of technological things that I really hadn't before. But it's a mixed bag, and the pandemic is led us to these things to be able to teach not in person anymore, but it's still the next best thing.
Let's explore that mixed bag aspect of what the pandemic has sort of presented us with. In the Hawaiian sense, our material culture from generations ago has been passed down through the generations into this new generation of weavers and woodworkers and those kinds of things. But one of the things that has remained with us is these songs. We have songs written about, having to endure cholera and the measles and those kinds of things. And they remind us really of the power of resilience and how, to your point, as a culture always in crisis, the real need to respond and to endure through that. I am excited though by this, to your point, the mixed bag, and want to talk a little bit about how the digital world, the digital space has created opportunities for us, like Teresa was talking about as an entrepreneur. And so, Teresa, why don't you share a little bit about the process by which you now have set up your own website and are using the space as a way to really self-sustain for your own economic viability.
Thanks, Aaron. Sure. Well, all of the in-person Indian markets that I usually sell my baskets in were immediately canceled for almost the entire year. And so luckily shows like the Abbey Museum Indian Market in Maine went right online. And I have to credit, the director, Chris Newell, and the staff there for talk about pivoting almost immediately. That was just within weeks in May. And being able to present to our collectors still digitally was really kind of exciting. And a lot of us learned the technology at that time as well. And the basket that's being shown here actually won I'm just proud to say, the Best of Basketry in the Santa Fe Indian Market. And so after 99 years, this was in person in Santa Fe in August. This was the first time the market has been held virtually. So again, this is also woven on the same wooden forms and tools that I had talked about earlier. So, and it's something our people have done for 200 years, marketing these baskets, and it keeps the tradition alive and also helps us encourage the next generations, which I think, we'll show some photos later with my son working with my apprentice.
Yeah, but
these
Teresa,
are some more of my baskets.
Thank you. Yeah, but now that the market has taken a digital direction, pivoted digitally, how has that affected the sort of intimate, cultural encounters, the physical intercultural encounters that take place at the market? Has that created? Is there a new way of the encounter?
No, not that I found yet. I mean,
Yeah.
and also I think it's really difficult for buyers, who really like to meet the artist in person and, pick up the pieces and hear your stories. And then the relationships with weavers are really strong across Native North America. I've known Bud for generations, I mean, for decades, because of our shared interest in basketry and being at basket weavers gatherings together. So those markets are the same, where we all the weavers who sell know each other, and it's not the same at all.
Mm-hmm. But have you found the chance to use the digital space in the same way as an entrepreneur for economic sustainability?
Well, interestingly, my sales have been good, and the people at the Southwest Association of American Indian Arts with the Santa Fe Indie Market actually helped us all build websites to bring us online together. So it's really kind of bringing us all into these places where we need to be, regardless of in-person markets too later on. So sales have been going well.
Oh, that's good. And Bud, for you, have you considered using the digital space in the same kinds of way as an entrepreneur, or have you maintained sort of the educational aspect of the usage of the digital space?
Well, my work has largely been educational, and it can be from basket making into the Siletz tribe's history itself. But like I said, it's a mixed bag. I guess a better way to put it might be it cuts both ways, because, for instance, there's some things that are perfectly okay within our culture to transmit those in the digital world, but then there are restrictions on other things. And in our way, a simple song, whether it's a gamble song or a dance song or any other kind of song that our people have, they're owned, they're considered property. So when I sing a song, if it's not my own, I have to get permission to use that. And I don't have the right to put that out there in cyber world and in the digital where it can be replicated and reused again, because I've gotten permission and I'm honored that way to be able to sing that song and have to respect that. So, trying to make it doesn't fit, one size doesn't fit all. And you have to really navigate these things carefully. But yes, it's a new tool that whether it's for marketing or just for educational purposes, it can be a blessing and a curse, but we just need to learn how to navigate those as we go into the future.
I'm hoping you don't mind my pushing you a little bit. Can I ask you to talk a little bit about that process? And you're talking about a cultural process of permission, right? Not a copyright intellectual property process of permission to sing these things. And before you respond, I think one of the things that is brought to my mind is we have an artist, recording artist, Kuana Torres Kahele, who is just an incredible talent. And he really harnessed the power of the digital space at the very beginning of our state closing down. And what he started to do was these online concerts. And in a way, you don't have the same camaraderie, audience to artists, that you might have in a concert venue. But what's fascinating about watching him is that he is having these conversations with people through the chat. So people are chatting to him and he's responding to them in real time. And there's this different kind of intimacy that occurs over the digital space. One of the things that he has started doing is bringing these artists from around town, elders and youth and artists of our own generation, and having these, physically distanced dinners in his yard. So he has a big table, and someone is sitting 5 feet away, and the other, and they're, hey, you over there, so tell us about your life in music, that kind of thing. And so I'm really interested in what you say about the cultural permissions, because it's something I don't think, is really part of the mainstream, figuring out how those cultural permissions are maintained in a cultural sense, but also how the digital space has, again, to your point, provided us a mixed bag to really think about the transmission of information and the transmission of cultural knowledge. So can you talk, if you don't mind, speak more specifically about the kinds of things that you are having to deal with?
Sure. Well, it's going to be different with every culture, every society, but these things exist throughout the world. So, for instance, getting that permission, it can be, and in our way, it's usually accompanied with some kind of a payment, and it's not like dollars and cents. It's it could be a necklace, say like something that I'm wearing, or it could be other forms of payment. But something is given for that gift that they're letting you use that song. And so, in that way of thinking, these things are treasured gifts that are shared, and it's also kind of if you can think about it this way, a way that people honor their community by lending their songs. And so it can be a minefield for a lot of folks. You have to be very careful about how you use those. And like I said, they're made for every thing in life. So there's love songs, there's dance songs, there's gamble songs for gamble power. All of these different ways of singing that you can use, but of course they are owned and they are property of somebody. So yeah, it's and then having the digital world to deal with on top of that is it can be can overcome some people sometimes, and mistakes are made. And the thing is once that property is out there on the internet, we've never experienced anything like that before.
Right.
It's one thing to sing something and repeat it. It's another for it to be out there in a digital form. So it can be a minefield. Yeah.
And I think you're so right. You talk about it starts to get very multi-layered. But can you talk a little bit? So you have some salmon photos, right, of work that you've done. This is an opportunity for you where you have harnessed the digital space in a certain way, right? Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, these the photos that we're looking at here, they're about Silet's way of cooking salmon, which is we call it yaktes in the language, and it's basically sliding it on a stick and cooking it around a fire. That being said, there's all kinds of culture that's packed into this. It's from the kind of sticks that you use, how they're whittled and they're soaked overnight before you use them, how they're skewered on, what you use for cooking wood. We use alder wood. And so I did these as part of a culture camp videos that we did in July for our people. We put them on annually, a culture camp, but we were unable to do it because of the pandemic. So I had to be selective in what I was going to try to teach. And I thought, what a good way, something that is simple that you can get across to people. And it's very nutritious for them too. And one of our main food sources, of course, are salmon. So in doing that, you're reaching out, teaching how to make the objects, and then showing how to use them in a practical way. So this is one instance where, of course, modern technology and the digital work just dovetails nicely with traditions, and it just flows. So they don't all do that, but this is that's the mixed bag I was talking about.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so cool. If you're just joining us, the program today is presented as part of the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage's initiative, Chronicling Culture Through Crisis. Thank you all very much for being here. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them. But before we go back to Teresa and talk to Teresa about what she's doing as a teacher these days, you showed us the salmon tool, those tools that you were using in the photos. Would you mind sharing with us in real time?
It's not that easy. Now, this is another challenge, but this is actually the stick, and they're 2 to 3 feet long, and they're beveled on the bottom, so they're strong. They're kind of an oval-like in the center, and they're soaked overnight. And this is just one of them, of course. A really simple thing to convey, but an important thing in our culture.
Thank you for that, Teresa. So you have some photos here that are going to come up that I think are fascinating, and I don't want to take the thunder away from you, but one of the things that we were discussing the other day that has really resonated with me is how this time of crisis has inspired a renewed energy, I should say, in you as a teacher, and understanding the importance of that teaching of these generations old practice that you have maintained. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, Aaron, thanks. Well, part of, again, this, really considering what was going on at the beginning of the pandemic, being an elder myself, thinking about legacy, and having worked with members of my family in basketry, including my oldest son, Caleb, who's now age 29, I wondered if something happened to me, would he be proficient in the basketry and this legacy and the tools and everything that I've taught him and, plan to leave behind. And so I became quite concerned he did as well. And it takes quite a while to learn everything about the processing of the wood and the sweetgrass. And so here, his name is Caleb, and he is weaving sweetgrass braids with me. And this is a piece he produced this summer as a result of himself being laid off. He's an assistant swim coach and really needed income, and ended up getting back into the baskets with me after, a little bit of a couple of year hiatus, and sold this piece almost immediately. So he'll be coming back to work with me over the Christmas break here as well. And I think we had maybe one or two other photos. These again are pieces of our work together. His piece on the right, and mine, a woven jar. And so, what's been really important, again, is the tool use, and being able to kind of translate the materials in real time beside each other. We've tried repeatedly throughout the summer to get together, and sometimes we couldn't get together because he thought he might have been exposed to someone. But it's really difficult to transfer this kind of intergenerational knowledge, through a digital format. Here, I'm working with my cousin Erica Nelson, who's also a student with me and will be an apprentice with me again next year. But she's a student with me in the Passamaquoddy language by Zoom, which is kind of a small silver lining in the pandemic, in that those classes are being offered online now. And so it's pretty neat that we can, kind of see each other across the Zoom space anyway. And, all kidding aside, that was another point too, that in the pandemic, we're told that we're losing elders who speak Indigenous languages across the world at a really alarming rate in this crisis. And so, the urgency there as well. And then this last photo is my grandnephews, who I did a school project with, teaching them to braid sweetgrass. And we did do this over Zoom. And so you can see me smiling on the iPad in between the two little guys, Garrett and Easton Secord. And again, just thinking about, what we have talked about too, and framed this program in how to be a good ancestor. How can I be a good ancestor? And I kind of, am quoting Tia Oros Peters and Chris Peters of Seventh Generation Fund, who really coined that term about 20 years ago. And I just think it's absolutely, apropos now in these times as a concept and a practice.
There is a question here that I think is appropriate immediately. This is from Barry Berge. I hope I said that correctly. He is wondering if there have been any recent developments related to the infestation of the emerald ash borer. Is climate change also an issue with regard to the natural materials you use?
Yeah, this is a terrible scourge, and talk about a pandemic on top of a pandemic. We've been waiting, sadly, for this beetle to come to Maine since 2003, when it was discovered in the Great Lakes, and our Anishinaabe ash basket maker weavers told us this would come. And it's finally here, and the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance has worked with the U.S. Forest Service, the Maine Forest Service, University of Maine at Orono for, again, the last 20 years to try to put all kinds of things in place. But the reality is, there was just a report last week that it's really widespread now, the infestation. And the first thing I did was contact my supplier and purchase a large amount of ash to try to keep myself and and my family in making baskets. And sadly, my baskets are getting smaller, and it's a serious issue. And climate change is the reason that the emerald ash borer beetle is here to begin with. And that's a whole scientific discussion that we don't have time for. But
yeah,
sad. It's tragic.
It is tragic, and the climate change has become a really important issue for us to consider. One of the things that always strikes me when I see your work, Teresa, is every time I see sweetgrass with you, I want to smell the sweetgrass. I want to feel and I want to touch the sweetgrass, and that's one of the things that is a real challenge for us here in this digital space, is that physical intimacy that we really miss. Bud, as a language teacher, have you been able to harness the use of the digital space in a way that I don't want to say overcomes, but at least affords you an opportunity to transcend the challenges of not being able to share the physical space?
Well, you can, it works and you can teach, but nothing ever takes the place of the in-person teacher to student dialogue that you can have, of course, in person. Now, we've utilized a lot of technology already, even before the pandemic, creating a talking dictionary that's online, Siletz Language Dictionary. And it took 2 years for me to record the 14,000 entries that went into it. So it's online. We've utilized lots of materials this way. So it's not that far of a leap for us, but the in-person touch and the humor, and we like to have a meal before we get together and eat, like
Sure.
most people's, and a prayer. And so that context and that setting you can't ever replicate completely online. But during these times, it's the next best thing, and being able to utilize it has just been a gift to us.
Yeah, I think in the world these days, it's really difficult to stay connected to the cultural protocols that you just brought up. These cultural protocols around eating, around working, around thinking together and talking together. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about the connection between language and cultural practice and traditional arts, and how that has, in a time pre-COVID and perhaps in a time post-COVID, how that might have evolved, if at all. I'm going to open the door and let you go, but my question really is about this connection between language and cultural practice.
Well, any language is a view into a culture itself. It's your worldview, your people's worldview. And just for instance, we use the black in our baskets. It's an overlay. We twine, most of our basketry is twining. And it's called maidenhair fern. It's the stem of the fern. And but in the language, we call it gitsa shrate, and it means blue jay's ankle, because it looks like
Beautiful.
a little bird's ankle. So you see these this cultural information that's embedded in the language, and it's so important to transfer that along with the physical teaching of basketry. When to get it, how, what elevation, what time of year, it all plays into it. But the way that the ancestors described this and used certain language words to describe and reveal their world, if you will, in that way, is so important. It's central to it. And I always say we don't compartmentalize into like basketry, regalia making, ceremony. To us, it's all one thing. But as it happens, we always get asked about them in these compartments.
Right.
But the language is the glue that holds all of this together. It's what makes sense of the world to us. So to have that and to be able to retain those things is key. It's absolutely key to the teachings and to revitalizing those things amongst our people, so they understand it the way our ancestors understood it to be.
Have you found that that using the digital space has afforded more students to get access to your language teaching?
Well, I'll tell you, I thought I was going to get out of the world. I just recently retired in September. So I can't really claim to have done a tremendous amount of work online. I've been doing some, even since I've retired. I still get requests all the time, so I'm doing that. But there's a whole new generation of folks out there with, like my granddaughter. When I have a problem with my phone, I have her fix it for me. So they're blessed with this. It's the challenge for us is to take the knowledge that the elders of today have, just like it was transferred to us, and transfer it to that new generation, and then they're going to plug it into that new technology. That's my challenge anyway at my age.
Yeah, one of the things that we found is through the University of Hawaii, Windward Community College, one of the 2-year colleges in the system, took a chance on this COVID time and set up an online Associate of Arts degree in Hawaiian Studies. And they thought they would get 50 students as a part of a pilot program for this new AA online. And what happened was all of these Hawaiians who are living in the world now have latched on and tried to sign up for this new AA. So a majority of the students has come from throughout America, in Europe, Asia, and these Hawaiians who have, in many cases, been grown up away. And this AA now affords them an opportunity to reach back in and find a touchstone for a culture they really are unaware of, which is fascinating. And I think to that point, I'll come back to you, Teresa, and ask you the question, what institutions might we be working in or with to effect the positive changes finally being put forth by the long overdue diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts in the forefront these days?
Well, I'm really happy to share that I have been working with a couple of museums here in Maine on decolonizing efforts, and also getting artists seen, in art museums and having our art shown as art. And I think we have a photo of 2019 opening of the Wiwanikan exhibition at the Colby College Museum of Art, where this exhibition was co-curated by Jennifer Neptune, a Penobscot basket maker colleague, and also Kathleen Mundell, a folklorist. And this really was the first time that, we had a standalone Wabanaki art exhibition. And so I'm there on the governing board, and I'm also on the trustees of the Portland Museum of Art, working on the inside now, having a voice in helping to, move this work forward and, bring opportunities to the basket makers that we helped mentor through the 2.5 decades of the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance work. And this, of course, is a piece by the great young basket maker, Jeremy Frey. And his work was also, I think we have one other shot of this same piece that's about 20 inches high. And this is the cover, which is a birch bark medallion on top of this ash basket that has porcupine quills kind of embroidered in there. So it's an extraordinary piece. And this was quite a large commission on the part of the museum to acquire his work. And so I think it's really great for us to be in these spaces and helping to make change at these institutional levels, as you say. It's timely. And again, it's a little bit challenging now with Zoom and having all of our board meetings that way.
You've done incredible work as the founding director of the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance, but the same for you as the president of the Northwest Native American Basket Weavers Association. And I wonder if you would both mind speaking, Teresa, firstly to that work, but also to how COVID has affected it. And I'm really interested in starting to look at how what we've learned during this time might affect looking forward into the future, into multiple futures, really. Teresa?
Okay, sure. Yeah, well, I do worry about this next generation of basket makers. That was our whole goal 25 years ago, was to save our own art form. And we essentially did. We lowered the average age of basket makers from 63 to 40 and increased numbers from around 55 founding members in the 4 federally recognized tribes here, Maliseet, Micmac, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot, to, I think the average age is around 40 today. But yet these basket makers were not able to get out into the markets and are not seeing a lot of opportunities in this year. And, that's a big concern. I think my other concern is the language loss that I talked about earlier. And, the worry about this year, non-COVID related, we lost two extremely important culture bearer basket makers. One is the late, great Molly Neptune Parker, who's also a National Heritage Fellow, was the president of the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance for probably 20 years. And, she was a fluent speaker of the language, and she was with us at the 2013 Smithsonian Folklife Festival, where we were showing how, there are practitioners who do weave in the language, which is something that, Bud talked about, and something that my teacher told me when she was mentoring me, the late Madeline Thomas Shea, in 1988, that you'll never be truly proficient in this until you can weave in your language. And so I'm running out of time, and I'm working on that, fast. But those are the things that concern me, again, is this, coming from both ends of the generational spectrums of the weavers, and, how to keep this work going forward.
For you, what does the future look like for you?
Well, for us, and I'll refer to it as NANABA, the Northwest Native American Basket Weavers Association. We've been unable to meet this year, and our annual gathering is of course the biggest thing that we put on, but we do smaller ones that we've been able to do also. For us, patience is something that we have to learn to demonstrate to our young people. We've been here before. We know that, for all the disease and all the things that has happened to our people since smallpox and other things that came through, we know that where people were able to isolate, they survived the best. So that's in our culture, it's in our history. And, we just have to have patience and ride this out rather than try to bring elders together, all those storehouses of knowledge, and take the chance. It's just not worth it at all. So, NANABA has about 700 members all through the Northwest here. And, keeping that alive and going is our responsibility, and keeping the safety of our elders and teachers is part of that responsibility. So we'll just have to wait, hopefully next year.
Aaron, go ahead.
Please,
I think I just wanted to say too that I think the importance of these gatherings that Bud is talking about, and even the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, are, really can't be overemphasized. Jeremy Frey and other younger weavers who were there in 2006 when the showcase was Native North American basket weavers point to that as turning points in their virtual, actual lives and careers, as becoming inspired by meeting the male Native Hawaiian artists, weavers, and seeing how weavers were being honored across the nation. They had no idea that this was happening. And so I can't overestimate the importance of gathering together in person as weavers. We need that to come back.
And on that point, if you're just joining us here as we start to wrap up, this is the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage's initiative, Chronicling Culture in Crisis. And we're very happy to have Bud Lane and Teresa Secord here with us. One of the images I have in terms of looking to the future from a Hawaiian perspective is the image of a 60-year-old, 70-year-old kumuhula, a hula teacher, standing in front of a computer screen with 40, 50 screens of their students teaching hula through Zoom. And I think I share your angst, collective angst, in that we just don't get the same kinds of that in Hawaiian we say i'ini, that same kind of where do I want to go? That same kind of physical, visceral reaction to the teaching of dance and the teaching of language. And I think you're spot on with those things. but I also see, again, to Bud's point, the need for resilience and to come right into dealing with this current crisis. But we have a couple of photos left that I would love for you to speak to, if you don't mind. These are some woven pieces that are so beautiful. I want to make sure that we acknowledge them because you brought them.
Oh, okay. Well, these are a couple of caps that I did. They're women's caps. Actually, they're my daughter and wife's caps. And the one that it's on the right, I think it's on your right, it's called Quail's Tail. And these are called Hechat. They're a fancy cap that our women wear for all ceremonial things and dress up. And the one on the left is a dance knife pattern. But incidentally, I thought I was being so innovative and put those little triangles in there opposing each other. I never saw that. And about 5 or 6 years later, I found a cap with the same mark in a book. So you think you're breaking new ground. Everything's been done over the centuries. So, but anyway, those are some of the, and this one is called Morning Star, and it has porcupine quill dyed with Oregon grapefruit, the yellow band in it in the center. And so these are top of the line of Oregon and Northern California basket making is these types of caps. And,
Beautiful.
You know, I integrated this into a last question, but this is also a question from Betty. What lessons learned during this time might you take forward into the future? And we'll wrap with this. And thank you both for being here with us. Teresa, you wanna speak to this at all?
Well, yeah, I just think just to be adaptable, you know, I think a lot of young people are seeing this for the first time ever, you know, some of my sons and my daughter-in-law, you know, being in their ages, and my stepchildren, like, you know, and we know about this, but to be adaptable and be able to pivot and know that pandemics will come our way. And for us, it's in the form of the beetle as well, you know, killing the very material that we source our creation in, the ash trees. And but you know, and your very life, you know, is so valuable. You have to be, you know, careful and ready.
And for you, Bud?
well, I think adaptability is the key word here. And you know, just because it's electronic doesn't mean that it isn't special. It's like your beautiful words and intro that you did for this show. Not all the time, but you can feel the spirit sometimes in different places, even over an electronic format. So like we said at the beginning, it's a mixed bag, but that adaptation is the most important thing, that we can adapt and survive and continue on, especially for those generations yet to come into the world.
I think you're both right. Adaptability and certainly harnessing the nature of resilience in our communities, indigenous and otherwise, and being sure that we are also chronicling this time in our lives for the generations to come, so that if and when they need to deal with a situation not unlike our own today, they have us as ancestors to look back to, thinking about Teresa's incredible evocation of being a good ancestor. That has resonated with me, definitely. We have a lot of people to thank. Thank you both for being here, and thank you all for joining us from around the world. We have a lot of people to thank, and please stay with us as we close out this program with the Silet's Feather Dance song by Bud Lane. Thank you to Bud Lane and Teresa Secord for sharing their experiences and insight. And we thank the audience for participating, all those who watched and listened and commented. Mahalo nui. I want to close by offering thanks to Marjorie Hunt and Arlene Reiniger for bringing us together. Additional thanks to Alyssa Huff, Sarah Rothman, Jenny Maycock, and Diane Nutting for their production, promotion, and administrative efforts. Follow the Smithsonian Folklife page here on Facebook to get notifications about future events, and find us also on Instagram and YouTube. Visit our website and come back here for our next program. Bud?
All right, I'd like to offer a song to honor this program and close it out. And this is my song about Yaquina Head. Ocean Point here, right off the coast. When I seen Holland, when I seen Holland, away, and away, away, and away, and away, when I, and away, away, and away, away, and away, and away, and away, when I, and away, away, and away, away, and away, and away, and away, away, and away, away, and away, and away, and away, Hu Chan Hu Now Hut Hatle. May the blessings be with you as you depart.
On no day.